Hello, I'm Maggie Miller here with Doug Thompson. He is Tanium's education architect. So welcome to the show, Doug.
Hi, thanks for having me, Maggie.
Yeah, we're going to dive into this new CISA report on K through 12 cybersecurity and some of the recommendations it has for school districts. But first, I just wanted to talk to you about how big of a problem is cybersecurity in K through 12 schools right now. We saw the uptick during the pandemic, but has it leveled off at all?
No, it's actually just simply accelerated. They were very opportunistic during the pandemic that came up because they had to sort of, hey, look, we have to get these learning tools out with that secondary, the security being a secondary consideration from this. And there was a big spike, and most of those were applications and stuff like that. You had the Zoom bombing and all that. But the ransomware and the other stuff still fairly consistent and consistently rising. That's been something coming because I know these schools are, especially K-12, are a prime target because, they're understaffed, typically underfunded, and they will attack them like during the start of the school year or these other things when the IT staff that they have are doing other things like resetting passwords, day-to-day stuff. And they know they don't have time to sort of be vigilant about that. So the report actually highlighted some of the stuff. And one of the things that they did was, it came about from the 2021 Cybersecurity Act that came up. So CISA was tasked with, hey, go find out what the real story is and come up with some recommendations. And this is what they did. And they presented these with one caveat. I thought this was very interesting. And I think they sort of captured part of what needs to happen is that, the changes got to have to come from the top down. Right. But they stopped here in this part saying it's a culture of cybersecurity, which is, that is important. Security is everybody's responsibility. It's not just the IT, it's just this other things. So you do have to have that mindset of that. But what left short, and we'll talk about in a minute, of some key things that they need to make that happen, to act on the recommendations.
Yeah. And so what were some of the recommendations that you pulled from this report?
Yeah. So it's, as they came through, it was more of we're lacking, we have gaps in these things, which are not a surprise, like security protocols aren't there. A lot of them weren't even doing MFA, which now is sort of getting multi-factor authentication, which is now getting there because that's sort of baseline security. If you can do that, you stop a lot of the stuff that goes on. So they found a gap in doing those things. What they're not, also they were sort of treating, most schools were sort of like an island. They weren't really communicating with each other, leveraging the networks and stuff that they have. Although organizations like COSIN and K-12-6 sort of come up with these ways that they can collaborate better. So we all, we can learn from each other's trials and tribulations we have. But a lot of them just had bad hygiene. They didn't know what they had. And it's because, there's a little bit like they were stuck in this loop of, well, we've always done it this way, and we really don't have the budget or talent to go ahead and do it a different way.
So the U.S. Government Accountability Office also released a report recently. Did you find the report was similar to what you saw in CISA's, or did you think they were conflicting at all?
No, I think it was 100% complementary to each other. They came up saying, basically without saying, hey, this is what we need to do, this is exactly right. I found no discrepancy between the two.
And so what is your advice to school districts on the heels of these reports? How do they lay down this foundation for cyber hygiene?
Well, I think they had some good guidelines, again, sort of making you aware of here's some best practices to go on that you can follow. Here's some resources. They have some free or reduced cost things. Like CISA was actually going to be doing some scanning and scanning from outside of your network. Do you have any open ports? Do you have any machines that are vulnerable from that side? And they would tell you that, and give you, here's how you can fix it. The big thing that still comes up is it usually comes back down to budget. Classroom always takes precedence over spending in other areas. And we should, their primary job is to teach students. But as we still have this hybrid learning environment, and the technology, teachers are more reliant on technology because the world outside of school is more technical, that they still treat IT as a cost center. It's not a strategic investment. So when it comes to funding, is always second class citizens. Now there are, the report does say, hey, look, there's some state and local grant funding that you can take advantage of. There's these other models that you can take advantage of to help try to get some funding, but it's still sort of an add-on in a patch, if you will. The districts I see, the schools that I see, which are what I would say are the North Stars to sort of point to, have taken that up, that we do not implement technology without a security and plan to maintain it going forward. Right. It's right now it's a bit backwards in that, hey, we're getting the technology where we're about, if we get breached or we get something else that goes on the back end. So again, it's going to be superintendents, it's going to be school board, it's going to be state education agencies, things like that again, they're pretty good about giving prescriptive guidance, but they all recognize there is a resource shortfall. They don't have the talent to go and do what, actually implement a lot of these recommendations. So how do we close that gap? And that's the thing that's going on. I've had discussions with state leaders here in Texas, trying to educate them. And there is a point in the sort of, I'll call it the education food chain, for lack of a better word. You have dictates that come down from the federal department, and then they go to state and it's local. And how do you then sort of aggregate where some talent may be? Where's a point up the food chain somewhere where we can pay people well enough, we can get the tools and tooling and stuff we need in place to get that visibility and expertise and all that, to take care of the schools that don't have, that's not one of the biggest districts around that have a bigger budget. Not that even the big ones have enough budget to handle everything, but how do we sort of handle this? Because over half the kids in schools are in these smaller districts, and some of them are so small, the bus drivers of the IT person. But how do we sort of protect that? So thinking about a different model, if you take sort of the whole of government model, of which we're looking at, some other states are doing, that's a better way to do that. And the state recognizes we need to step up. We need to provide the resources and the stuff to go ahead and help them comply with these guidelines. And at the end of the day, that would help them focus on teaching, doing what schools should really do. And aggregate that security up a level, like maybe at a district service center. Back when I was in school in Texas, the district service center gave film strips. I mean, I'm that old, had film strips and things like that. Not a big demand for that anymore, but they do have talent there and they do provide some services. So that's a great aggregation point. If you can get them the tools and training and stuff to keep them updated. And the problem is a lot of these tools and point tools that are out there don't really fit well in that environment. So you have to sort of think about, okay, from a platform perspective, how do I get the best performance and how do I enable that scenario to take place? And that's what we've been talking about from a Tanium perspective, is saying, hey, here's from a platform perspective, that we can do some things that nobody else can do to help you sort of realize that dream.
Yeah, that's some great advice. Do you have any other advice or things that school districts should keep top of mind as they are heading into this school year and throughout the next?
Yeah, it's not going to get better. Putting denying that it happens, putting your head in the sand, say, hey, look, we have cyber insurance. Cyber insurance is going up if you can still get it. Used to, that was the easy button. I don't worry, we got cyber insurance, we'll do that. That's no longer the case. The insurance companies now, there's fewer and fewer of them, so the rates are going higher and higher because of the breaches and stuff that came up. So it may get to a point where, if you think about it, I'm paying this much for a premium. Why don't I refocus that money on prevention, right? So that the need for cyber insurance becomes less. Maybe rates don't go up and stuff. It's still sort of a decision you have to make. But if I can prevent that from happening, because a lot of the vast majority of the breaches are things that should have been patched or we know about. They're not some surprise thing that came up. But you should have training. Clicking on an email, getting mail. We're humans. As long as carbon-based life forms are involved, there's still going to be clicking that goes on. But again, they take advantage of a lot of things that we know that are out there that haven't been fixed. So doing the baseline stuff that's there. I used to do Ironman triathlons. If I did not do the base training, I couldn't show up on race day and expect to finish the race. Hey, I'll just do it today. I don't have time to do these other things. So, that's the tip. Just don't give up. Rethink. Make this a strategic priority.
Yeah.
So that you can keep teaching. You don't have to worry about it. And talk to your legislators. Talk to everybody that has purse strings and evangelize. Hey, we need help. Recommendations are good. How can you help us get the bodies to do that? Maybe we need to rethink how we're doing this.
Yeah, these are good thoughts. I'm hearing prevention is really key and also finding those collaborations within the state government to help.
Yeah, exactly. You can't have enough friends in this boat with you helping to fight this.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Doug, for sharing your insights today.
Sure. Thanks, Maggie.
And thank you all for watching. I'm Maggie Miller, and this is To the Point.